I'm very happy that today for our online event in Denmark on the January 12, 2022, we in DEA, the Danish NGO working for the democracy in Europe, have a possibility to invite you, Vladimir Mitev from Bulgaria, to give a short interview on some social issues in your country. So welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, so I'll jump in automatically in the questions that we prepared, and so I want to ask you very shortly to tell us a little bit about your city, the place that you are joining us from, Ruse, a city on the southern bank of the Danube River and the border with Romania. Can you tell us a few words about your city? Just a few things about it which you mean should be important for our viewers to know.
Ruse is a city which has been established in the 1st century after Christ, so it has a lot of history. It has had ups and downs, and in the most recent period related to the establishment of the modern Bulgarian state, it was one of the important cities in Bulgaria. Currently, it is the 5th largest one with population of around 140,000 people. It has certain foreign investment. It has an university, an airport for civil flights is on way to be opened. And there are a lot of things to be said, but importantly, Ruse is also a cultural city, and maybe the audience may know the person of Elias Canetti, who is a Nobel laureate of literature, who is born in Ruse and has always referred to his origins from the city of Ruse.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this brilliant short introduction. And now, as agreed, I will have some questions about the living standard in your city and in Bulgaria as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the living standard? Like, for instance, what is the average salary in Bulgaria, and how is the situation with the people after they retire? What are their pensions? And how does this situation with salaries and pensions compare to the cost of living? Is there widespread poverty in the country, or is it something that is not that common?
Bulgaria has been known for years for lagging in social indicators, lagging behind, being one of the poorest members in this sense. To get certain idea, I need to say that the median salary in Bulgaria is above more than 750 euro. However, this is due to the fact that there are some sectors of the economy who get high salaries, but in fact the inequality of income is too high. Bulgaria is the country with the highest Gini coefficient in the EU. In fact, if we take the median salary, which is the salary of the middleman, let's say, in Bulgaria, the last time it was calculated in 2018, the median salary was 50% higher than the median one. So also importantly, in 2019, the last data I am aware of, 90% of the income in Bulgaria was limited or below 900 euro. So these are some signs that some people may be living really very well in Bulgaria, but a large number of the people struggle, and maybe we could discuss further their issues. As with regard to pensioners, the retired people, it is important to say that efforts are being made to raise the pensions, but in fact half of the pensioners, around 1 million people, receive the minimum pension, which as far as I know, from the beginning of this year, is raised to a sum equal to 185 euro per month. And to put into context, the poverty line in Bulgaria is 205 euro as of beginning of this year. So in fact, these people officially they are below the poverty line. I said that efforts are being made for the increase for the raise of pensions, and in fact there is also inequality with regard to pensions. So some people can get a pension of up to 750 euro, and the medium pension is in fact around a little bit below 300 euro. So an issue, as you can imagine, there are issues right now, especially with the prices of energy, given that we are in the winter. And there is a category of people called energy poor people. So these are people who struggle to get warming to warm their apartments or houses. And the number is of these people is calculated at somewhere, for sure, 1/3 of the people, possibly even a little bit higher.
That's a very huge numbers, and in that way you already partly answer that the next question is about I mean, if there is a large underclass in the country, and the question of middle class actually not being that big, but mentioning this thing about the people not being able to pay their energy consumption, the prices are very high compared to what they earn. I also think there is an interesting for us to know a little bit about the question of apartment ownership. What is the situation in terms of apartment ownership? Do people most commonly own their places they live in, or is it something they rent? And how is that compared to the salaries? And maybe also in continuation of that, you can also tell us a little bit about the people who are living on the countryside and the land ownership. How is the distribution in the country, especially maybe compared to the situation before, during the communist time? Who are the people who gained the land after the privatization processes?
I think for referring to the socialist times, because they're important for putting things into context. During socialism, there was, as our viewers know, state planning of the economy and state control over plenty of what was going on. But in fact, it allowed also for planning of various industrial projects, and in fact, people could have lived also in small cities or small towns or villages. They had what to do there, and also the problem with the houses, the housing problem was pretty much resolved. In fact, because of this heritage of socialism, if somebody looks at the stats of Eurostats, he may see that maybe around 90% of ownership, people seem to be owners of apartments. However, that is a little bit distorted in the sense that the fact that people live in their own house doesn't mean obligatory that they're the owners. In fact, often young people live in the housing of their parents, and it is difficult to buy a new apartment if you don't have the income of the middle class. It is related to going into debts. And in my view, that is a huge issue for Bulgaria, because in the new times, so I said that there was planning in socialism, there was development in various places in Bulgaria, but in the new times, a lot of the development in the country, in the sense of work perspectives, were destroyed. Industry was destroyed, and if some young man wants to become something, to do something meaningful, he has to move to bigger cities, especially to Sofia, which leads in itself this problem with housing. So, in fact, rents in Sofia are very high, and that creates economical problems. People are not economically so much independent, and to have a family of your own is difficult. Especially kids are difficult, they are costly, let's say. So these are huge issues which to a great extent right now are left to the market. Simply those people who have money can resolve those problems. There are people who have, let's say, 6 apartments, 10 apartments and give them to rent, and they have a fortune. But a number of people who don't have this accumulation of capital from before, or don't have the good contacts in Sofia, they need to be in a way exploited by constantly being under rent. So just to finish the issue with the housing, there are, as we know, there is a housing movement in Europe, which had even huge success in Germany recently. Bulgaria is famous for having difficulties in grassroots movements. People are simply not having the time or the energy or the will to organize certain organizations, certain pressure groups, etc. So housing is a big issue, but we don't have a member in the European organization of the housing movements. And my guess is that this issue will be getting ever greater, and I hope we could maybe take example from other countries, even from our neighbors. For example, in Romania, there is a strong housing movement. With regards to land ownership, also that is an issue that a lot of people had land after the so-called restitution, I think is the word in English, which is, let's say, in socialism, land was united into certain, let's say, cooperatives, however state-controlled, state-owned, and after the after the return to capitalism, let's say, the restoration in the 90s, there was this slogan that the land be returned to the proprietors, original owners, or their inheritance. So people got their land, but eventually many of them in these hardships of transition used this asset of the land to sell and to get some money for children to study abroad or whatever, to buy an apartment in the big city, whatever. So as a result of this process, and also combined with the fact that many people left the villages, so villages are in a crisis, strong crisis in Bulgaria, a number of people, very limited number of people, owns a large amount of the arable land. And in fact, that is quite an industry because, as we know, European Union provides subsidies to those people who grow certain agricultural crops, and those people who have a lot of land respectively become very rich. However, given that it is industrial production, let's say, of crops, of agriculture, grain especially, or sunflower, there is simply no need for workers so much in villages. So that is another reason. Basically, the capitalism leads to the death of villages, if I may say. And that is another issue if really our government or people in the elites are aware of this problem, I guess some solutions have to be found.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. And as agreed, now we will proceed to some questions from the audience. And thanks a lot for doing this.
I'm open for questions.